I have like maybe, I don't know if it's a question, but more like the topic started that we all know like this traditional, XAT or something feedback form when you like someone somewhere in the bottom of the page you're placing like, was this page helpful or something with, and there is some options that you can have yes or no or some more specific options there, and they're quite, a frequently used one. But we're thinking like about redesigning this experience for us, and because it's like sometimes feedback, it's either irrelevant or you can't actually locate to which exactly part of the page it is they are talking about. Because like, for example, the tutorial or some reference part especially, which is like people are not reading like right away from top to bottom, but they are like mostly skimming or doing Control F something. And we're thinking about maybe bonding the feedback to some specific parts of the page. Like, for example, when someone is doing like highlight some specific method or a part, like a phrase, and that only then the feedback form will appear. So the feedback will be bonded to some specific phrase. So what do you think? Maybe if someone considering like, because this bottom feedback forms are quite frequent, but I've never seen something like that before. So maybe we can discuss, is it like worth from the UX perspective and from the results tracking perspective for you?
I can right away share a little bit about our experience with that. Our API docs platform README actually has this built in that basically you can suggest edits to a page, and you can, there's a couple of different use cases. Some customers are lazy that just pinpoint that, hey, this problem here on this page, please fix it. Or some actually take the effort and like propose an updated version as well. And basically on our side, as we receive it already as a kind of like a PR, like, hey, here's the old version, here's the new version, like take it into account pretty much. However, and we have this like, was this page useful for you or not, this like thumbs up and down thingy as well. But I have to say, our customers don't use those features, those functionality. They rather just use the chat in our case. It's very, very unpopular. It's rarely used, like some rare use cases. One fun case was that basically we've had a customer who proposed that we put their logo onto our API docs for whatever reason.
So it's a frequently asked feature, but I think I've seen this work successfully in open source products, where like the open source community contributes to the open source project by doing a pull request against the docs. But for commercial products, then maybe that doesn't work, or people just start like, you should figure this out on your own. Like, I'm not going to do the job for you. I'm already paying you.
In our case, they mostly give feedback about the product itself, not the documentation.
Yeah.
They care more about that. Just that's based on our experience. I don't know if you have something.
I mean, I've seen, I don't have like first-hand experience with this, but I've seen like also a few companies for commercial products. They actually either they use something like README where this is built in, or they have like Git repositories with their documentation, and they ask for like feedback, or they ask for contributions. And I've heard from some companies they actually had some like good experience with that. But yeah, I don't think that's like something you can really rely on your users like giving contributions. I think like just giving like a low level or like very low friction way of giving feedback to your documentation. That's like really important. And but I think there's also has to be relevant. I think, for example, what you just mentioned, like these flags, like is that page good or bad? I don't think that's like really relevant feedback, because you don't know what it is. And I think, and to what you said earlier, like tying it to certain elements of the page, I think that's that's quite a good idea. And what I have in mind right now is the way, for example, comments work on the blogging site Medium, where you can also add comments to like different actions, or there's some like annotation tools. And I think that's useful because I think common problem also with like any sort of customer support is that you don't get context. Like people, they will just say, okay, this is wrong, and then you have to ask them like what exactly is wrong. So, so yeah, gathering something very specific, I think that's quite helpful.
Anybody has other experiences with feedback systems that did work, that didn't work? Yeah?
I can tell about something that didn't work. Yeah, like Lana has said already, we are both from JetBrains. We are thinking about redesigning our feedback widget, and there are two things that we really find bad about it. First of all, to leave a feedback, there is this question at the end of each page asking you whether this page was helpful, and to leave feedback you have to say no, and then you get this entry field where you can leave a comment. And I mean, probably a page was helpful, but you found a little typo or I don't know, some missing piece of information, but it was still helpful. So yeah, you have to say no. And then at some point a few years ago, we split the feedback channels. So if you leave anonymous feedback, then we get a ticket in our bug tracking system. But then there is no way for the author of the feedback to track it because it's created automatically and they cannot follow it. But if they leave their emails, then a ticket is created in Zendesk. And then, of course, the support gets to it and they can follow. But sometimes people don't understand, although there is explanatory text. And we get tickets in UTrack, which we could actually answer, but the person would never see the reply. And vice versa, to Zendesk go bugs, which should not be there. So, yeah, that's something that we want to fix.
Thank you. Other feedback stories? Who has implemented feedback on their developer portal or API documentation? Well, first, who's running an API program where you could get feedback? Anybody? So there's not, okay. So I'm not sure if then the question is valid. But have you implemented feedback on your developer portal or your API documentation? You want to go first?
Yes. Well, we're currently trying to find out what makes sense and what is easier for the developers and for our users to give feedback for. Of course, we have Google Analytics, tracking this way, also monitoring our APIs, errors and so on, which also can make us conclude on issues we need to fix. We do have a feedback form, but this is probably not the best way to go. We've concluded. Well, that's why I'm here, just to see what's the best way to combine all these insights into well, improvements for our dev portal, but also for our APIs and the quality.
Are you comfortable sharing why it didn't work or what didn't work?
Well, specifically the feedback form, it just doesn't have many users using it and giving us input, like more the qualitative input that we need. So we've noticed our team sitting together with developers, either internally or partners, to go through the process and understand what is giving them more hard tips. But yeah, it's more the lack of input.
Thank you. There was another one.
Hey, I was just thinking through this in terms of how we implement feedback at different points. And I think if I go to the very beginning, straight away when we're designing APIs, we have like a rule that no API will get built unless the design has actually gone to a customer or multiple for feedback and validation, which has actually been really helpful because then at the design stage of the API, we start working through documentation. And then when we go into our early access or one goes into production, hopefully we've captured a lot of the feedback that would have been pitfalls previously. What we then have is we use tools like Hotjar to just analyze and record like how people are using the site, which is quite handy to kind of look at what pages are they spending the most time on. We do have the feature of what you were just saying with README of like, was this page helpful, suggested edits? Like, no one does that. And then we've got, what we found then is that we have like support as well via ticketing or a live chat. And what we've ended up doing was going any tickets that come through support, we make sure that we have whatever the resolution is, we try and go back into our documentation to improve it so it doesn't come up again. Doesn't always work. Sometimes the search feature, people know the search feature's there. Sometimes they don't even see the search feature. So I think a lot of like the successes when it comes to feedback has actually been where we've proactively as API product managers gone out to clients, most of the time jumped on like a Zoom or a Teams meeting and like gone through stuff, and we've got really good insights from that. Where we haven't really got good insights is forms or hey, you raised a support ticket, it's now being fixed. Can you give us feedback on your support journey? Like, I don't think anyone really gives good feedback.
Are you comfortable sharing what company you work for, or yeah?
Yeah, so it's Fiserv, a payments company. We're actually talking tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah. I would like to quickly ask, I'm not sure if you were there earlier for my talk, because I also talked about like collecting feedback in the design stage, and that's why I'm curious, like how when you are doing your API design, like before implementation, like in which way do you, as you said, you're going to clients, you ask actual customers about this design, how you're doing it, like how you're demonstrating the API to them.
So it depends at what stage we are when it comes to designing an API. We have our roadmap publicly there where there's APIs where it's literally, this is an idea, we haven't done anything yet on it, and then we gather anyone who's interested in that idea. As soon as we start to work on it, we'll start talking to them, and sometimes it's purely just, tell me a bit about your use case, what are you trying to build, what's the experience that you're trying to build, and then we can take that away and we can start to look at how do we build an API to fulfill that need. Sometimes we have an internal capability, or we might have an internal API. And one of the big goals, especially when we have internal capabilities and APIs, is how do we abstract complexity in our external API? Because we cannot just say, here's our inner workings, because trust me, there's a lot of stuff which are like, a user shouldn't need to know that. So it's at various points, but a lot of the time it's like, let's get an open API spec in front of them. Sometimes they can just glance at it. It depends who you've got on the call. If you've got like a developer who's very familiar with the specs, then they'll be like, yep, I can do this on the call with you. Sometimes, say if it's more of a business persona, they might take that away, pull in a technical persona, and then we might have a follow-up. But a lot of the time it's just, let's just have a conversation about what you're trying to achieve, and if we can share a spec, even if it's not finished yet, it's just a rough kind of structure, we find that really helpful. Sorry I missed your talk earlier, so I have to follow up.
Yeah, but there was this was like really good information, very interesting, thank you.
Thanks. I know that, I think it's Daimler who does this like workshops with customers to get feedback when they're designing APIs. So I think that's probably a good practice to solicit feedback and to like go and find it. That's what I'm getting from this. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe something to share that we're trying to do. So I'm a UX researcher. Often we're trying to go to these clients to get feedback, and often we get like, no, like we want to talk about something else. We have these problems we want to work on. Fix that first before you source that feedback, you know. So we get that hard block. So what we're trying to do as a recovery method is to do ethnography. So actually joining sales calls, joining account managers, joining support calls. So for example, as a company, we have sales, we have program managers who work with our clients, and technical support who support the sales and also the program managers if in case there's technical questions. And what we do as a workaround is we join these calls as like a note taker, but really we're there to really observe and see what questions are being raised. And then in a separate Slack or separate chat, we send a message to the program manager or someone who's facilitating the conversation. Can you ask more about this? What are they asking about? Or what decisions are they trying to make at this point? And then we have a debrief after. It's very high touch, it's very high effort, but it's what's giving us a lot of contextual understanding of the types of problems that they're facing with the product that we're offering. And we also have a product manager with us there also. So, and another from there is if we are having a client that's open to having a discussion, we do like a demo. So we demo, like we share a strategy or the roadmap, or we demo something and then we get some feedback from there. But really what we're trying to explore more is that ethnography approach where we join these calls as a note taker, but really we're trying to source feedback naturally. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. So it's one of the, we had a set of we were doing kind of a side event on complexity earlier this year. And one of the key things there is from social practice theory that tools are not enough. So like tools alone cannot solve the problems if you don't have the practices that work together with the tools. I think that's a really good example that, you know, feedback is an active thing where you actually have to go and solicit it. That's the takeaway that I'm getting out of this. It's really interesting. Other questions or observations or feedback stories? Yes, go for it.
Sorry, I don't want to monopolize the time, but you were just saying what was really interesting around having that hard block. We found that building up that relationship over time, we've managed to get like more and more of our client and customers' time to have open chats. So we do like a quarterly focus week where I get all of like the API product manager team to take a week out and we focus on a particular topic, but there's always a client aspect to it. So like one of the focus weeks, we were actually redoing our documentation. And what we did was we went, okay, we want to user test this. So we just reached out to some friendly clients who we knew we had delivered some APIs to before, so they were happy enough that we had delivered some APIs to them. So I was like, yeah, we'll jump on a quick call to this, essentially do, it was a think aloud study. So it's like, okay, here, you're coming to our site, you want to do this, how do you navigate it? Talk me through what you're doing. And then the next quarter, we did another focus week. And instead, what we did was we actually said, we just want to talk to you about, you know, what are you doing, not right now, but what do you want to do in the future? Like, what's on your roadmap? And it was really surprising, like the amount of clients who are just really happy to have a chance to just speak about, oh, okay, well, this is really what we want to do. This is where we see it going in like 5 years when it comes to payments, and this is what we want to do for it. So then we were able to go, okay, how does this link back to our roadmap? And it was like a really interesting session, but it took time to build up the rapport exactly. And I think having the right people on the call really helped. So I have two examples that come to mind. One was I had one guy come on who demoed what we were trying to test with GraphQL, and he had a right audience there who was just like, I'm really interested in this, and they clicked. And then one which was outside of work is I did a healthcare related study, and what was really interesting was I had people share so much information because we were talking about a subject that I knew about as well. And it was, I was astonished by how much someone shared their personal details because they just got on with the user interviewer. So, sorry to monopolize, but you got me excited.
All good. keep the gold coming. Yeah. Any observations on that, or? Yeah. Do you have? I think we're getting near to the end of this slot. Any last kind of, I was going to say it in Dutch, uitsmijter. But any last question or observation? Anything more for our panelists who've been on camera all the time? Any last words from either of you for the slot?
I guess I can just share one more thing as well. Another alternative option that we have used to gather feedback was that we did it the other way around, that we published documentation first. and then just added this exclamation mark that, hey, this is still work in progress, reach out to us if you want to use it, and kind of like reverse the process, and then customers reach out to us, and then basically then we engage them into this conversation of like, what do you want to do with it, how do you want to use it, and then basically as we were building the backend actually at the same time. So basically, and as soon as something was ready, we could already give it to them and basically apply it there. And for the backend, we used feature flags in that sense. So for the APIs, but yeah, we haven't figured out the way to do feature flags on the documentation side. So we just put it out there for everyone, but with a warning that it's not fully available.
I think that's like I would say that this is like a really good position to be in, because I think just like gathering feedback, I think it's also like it's really important to get feedback from customers and get it like in all stages and on all things, on your API design, on your API documentation, on everything you do, because you can only improve with feedback. But then it's also you have to be like really careful not to like overdo it and not to nag your customers too much. So I think if you can get into that situation where it's like actually the customers reaching out because they are interested in something, I think that's like the perfect spot to be in, because then they want something from you and it's not like you wanting something from them. Yeah.